Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We are back with Beyond Sunday, and we couldn't be more excited. We have our lead pastor, Justin Kendrick, sitting in the chair across from us. Welcome, buddy.
It's fun.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
I'm doing great.
How's everything going?
Everything is going great. You know, I think we're all starting to feel that spring has finally almost begun.
Yep.
And there was a couple of warm days this past week, and it felt like, man, it's time to come alive.
There is nothing better than walking out your door and hearing birds chirping.
I know.
That is, I don't know what it is. It's just that sound. It's like, is it spring? Is it? It feels like spring.
It's the best.
It is just such a beautiful moment where
Yes.
you're like, it's not frigid.
I know. And I think New England winters, man, you know, getting to the other side of them is such a blessing.
Yeah. I mean, being in New England, I have to say, we get the best of all four seasons,
I agree.
Which is, you know, you look forward to winter, you look forward to the snow, Christmas is coming, you look forward to that season.
You look forward.
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. But at the same time, you look forward to spring, you look forward to summer, and then fall. Fall's one of the best seasons. You know, you get to throw on a little jacket. It's beautiful out, the leaves. I think we have
I could do 2 months less of winter. You know, if we could extend fall to December and then start spring February 1st, that would be perfect for me.
Well,
but
God answers all prayers, right?
well, not all prayers.
Not all, you know, but you can ask. You can definitely ask. So how is everything going with all these restrictions? You know, and I know a lot has been going on in the last couple of weeks, but our governor said that we are now able to lift some of the restrictions.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about what that means for Vox, what that's going to be like for campuses, you know, and just we can kind of all encompass what that means for us.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, we've done our best. Number one, to really honor people, keep them safe, play it smart. There's so many different opinions about how to do what, you know, we have not as a church done it perfect, but every season we've kind of tried something new. So a couple weeks ago, maybe 5-6 weeks ago now, we're allowed to do 50% capacity for churches. Thankful for that. March 19th, there are no restrictions in Connecticut on church capacity anymore, which is just amazing. Really excited about that. And so that'll allow us to actually have Easter services with people.
Yeah.
So that's great, but still providing online services, and we're still seeing thousands of people join us every week, which is awesome. So we're thankful for that. The church has actually grown, just about doubled in size when it comes to weekly participants with online. So we're thankful for that in the last year. But yeah, looking forward to March 19th where restrictions are loosened. We'll keep all of our protocols. People will still wear masks. We'll stay careful, stay distanced, everything else. We're not looking to become the place where everything spreads. But I do think that people are becoming more comfortable. It's springtime. I think it's going to be a good year. I think that, no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but I think by the summer, things will start to feel a little bit, I don't want to say more normal because I think normal's over, but better.
It'll get there.
Yeah,
and
better.
You want to know what's funny is I was thinking about this as I was driving here. 1 year ago from what's today's date? So 1 year ago
now.
From this time is when we
The
got
world
the
changed.
word. Hey, we're going to shut everything down. And you look at what happened to us as a people throughout the year. I mean, COVID aside, the changes that we've made as a society, the changes we've made as individuals. Yeah, I look at my life, I look at my family, I look at the people that I know. There's been significant changes I mean, some for the bad, but a lot for the good. A lot for the good. You take a step back, and now we're starting to see normalcy. But now, can we take all the good that we've gotten from COVID, and can we bring that to the quote unquote normal life?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I think that I know for me and for a lot of people, COVID was a reality check where we had to stop and slow down and confront some of the junk that in the busyness of life and the movement of life, you don't have to confront. So for me, I've been thankful for that. I'm like, okay, Lord, you've used this time in my life, Jesus, to deepen my faith and recenter my focus and my purpose in life really like never before. So I'm all about it. So sometimes we see this in the Bible all the time. Sometimes God has to actually slow things down and thin things out so that the work of what he wants to do on the inside can then manifest on the outside. And so I think as Americans especially, we have a tendency to focus on outside, and it's always about bigger, better, faster. And that's not always bad, but God wants to often go deeper, more substance with better answers on the inside. So I welcome that. I'm all about it. I've actually kind of, in many ways, just said yes. Like I'm all about that. And I think for the movement, we really believe at Vox, God's called us to see New England changed in our lifetime from the least church region to the most spiritually vibrant place on earth. I think that this year has been strategic. I think that the health and the stability and the systems and the depth of our devotion to Jesus that has developed in the church and in our leadership over the last year is going to carry us for the next 20. Mm-hmm. And so it's all good. He knows better than we do.
And one of the things that came out of this last year was this online church.
Yeah.
We were a church that we were set up for online. Yep. We had all the components to go online, but we didn't necessarily call it, hey, online church. Yep. So, in that role, and Josh Conrad was actually recently announced the online campus pastor, which is awesome. Yep. But was that part of the plan from pre-COVID? Was that something that you wanted to do?
Yeah. So it's something we've actually wrestled with a ton over the last number of years. As many people know, a lot of churches across America are doing this. We've always been on the more technology advanced side of church because we're multi-site. And so, we've had the capacity for a long time. I'm a big believer in the idea that proximity creates opportunity. In other words, when it comes to building deep community, knowing Jesus is an individual thing, but it's also a collective thing. Yeah. So you need to be a part of the family of God. And I do think that there are just limits to how much you can be connected to others when you're on the other side of a screen. So I've been hesitant to just really launch a church online. I don't think that church online long-term can take the place of church in person. I don't think it can, because I think that life on life, real relationship, the accountability of being in the room with my brother, him looking in my eye and say, how are you doing? It's just different than viewing online. But I do think that church online is a really powerful front door to church. And so, in the past, it was come to the church and see what we're like for somebody maybe who doesn't believe in Jesus. Yeah. But now, honestly, people are even more skittish around Jesus. So instead of come to the church and see what we're like, it's come to the website and see what we're like and really experience a service before you even commit to come. And so I do think we've seen just an exponential increase in the number of people who are willing to check it out. And so that's awesome because it just means more people are willing to check out Jesus. But Josh's primary role long-term will be to help people integrate from online into life-on-life community, whether that means small groups that are in person eventually once people feel safe enough, or a physical location from Vox, or if they're from some other part of the country where we don't have a location, helping them find a physical church in their community as well. Yeah. And so church online really is a front door. I don't think it takes the place of church in person. I think it becomes really like a part of the family.
Yeah. And one of the Vox mission statements is to reach New England. Yeah. And that's one of the things that you've been focused on since the start of this church. But with the online church, we've been able to reach, and I actually looked at the statistics, different countries, different states, outside the realm of New England. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Does this change the perspective of Vox Church to be a New England-based community? Sure. Or is it, we're open to everyone, but we want to thrive in New England?
Yeah, I think it's all about priority, right? And so do we want to be a blessing? So I have a book coming out it's in September that, I've been going back and forth with the publisher, like how passionate do I want to be about people all across the country, being blessed by this book. Obviously, I want to bless as many people with this book as I can, but my focus, my first priority is always going to be this region. And I think for me, the reason is it's not first priority for virtually anyone across America. Yeah. We are the least churched region. And so thank God for the great work that's going on in Dallas or in Orlando or in San Diego. There are great churches all over this country. New England's in need. And most people, because if you go to Ohio, 50% of people are going to go to church on a regular basis. Oklahoma. If you come to Connecticut, that number's 2%. So most bigger ministries just don't stay here or invest here because you don't get the return. So we're going to. And so for us, we're going to always disproportionately prioritize New England, not because it's best for us or it will grow fastest, but because it's the most needed. And but our second priority is to bless the world, to touch the world. And so even with Church Online, same principles apply. We're going to focus on those that are joining us from cities where we're going to launch. Providence, Boston. We're already doing a whole bunch of data gathering to build people up in those communities because we're launching there in the next couple of years. But if you're coming from Zimbabwe or if you're coming from Sri Lanka, we still want to encourage you, be a blessing to you, create opportunities for our resources to encourage you. But it is a second priority for us. First priority will be New England.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear that, this is our home. This is where, we grew up, and you're right. You go to different parts of the country and you realize the drastic difference between societies, and not necessarily in a bad way, but, just commonalities, the way that people present themselves, the way they do different things. There's a major difference between New Englanders and, so let's just say the Bible Belt, down south. And, I think it's just awesome that we have the opportunity to do something big in this region.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about what are you called to? And I think for us, we're not called to create this big global ministry first. First, we're called to reach New England, and we want that to be a blessing to the world. But it's just all about, it's not, I don't think it's necessarily right or wrong. I think it's what has God called the individual movement to be a part of. And I think we're called here. I think we're called here. So people say all the time, well, if you had an opportunity to open up a campus in LA, what would you do? I'm like, I'd sell the building and launch a new church in Boston. We're going to focus here. And that's where we are,
That's powerful. So getting in line with that. So we're about not halfway through, but we're a quarter way through the second year of Wake My Heart.
Yes.
So I just want to give people an update on what the new building's like. What are the plans? How is everything going from your perspective?
Oh my goodness. So again, we're really in the middle of a miracle, right? So the bottom fell out of American society 12 months ago. And who knew what would happen to the church? Yeah. Would we just scatter and fall apart? We all made these faith commitments. Would we all just run from them because there was so much instability? And crazy, it is a miracle that in the midst of all of the chaos of the last 12 months, our Wake My Heart commitments, which if you remember, was our financial commitment to really see the gospel advance, 3 key priorities: strengthen our current ministries, launch anchor location and build new churches, and establish a site acquisition fund. $19.5 million over 2 years was committed. And we are almost to the dollar on track right now. Yeah, which is crazy. So it's like I don't know, between 3 and 4% off right now overall. And so thank you, Jesus. That's a miracle.
Amen.
Now, a lot of new people have joined in our giving, which has helped because some people have fallen off. And so, but all by and large, overall, that's where we're at. And so that's awesome. That's really, really encouraging. When it comes to that first priority of strengthen our current ministries, it's strange, but COVID actually created an outstanding environment for us to do this. And so it gave us 12 months where, because we weren't launching as many new locations or launching as many new initiatives, we could really just focus on getting things healthy. And so completely overhauling almost every department within our organization. So we have 11 central departments within our organization. And we've done a pretty robust overhaul of every single one. That's the creative team, that's kids ministry, that's youth ministry, that's groups, that's the finance department, that's our operations. You go through literally our data, every single, it's been just a scrubbing year.
Yeah.
And what that's done is it's created for us a platform where we are right now exponentially healthier as an organization than we've ever been. Yeah. So that's super encouraging, just because it means that as we launch new churches, it's coming from a place of health, not a place of lack, But then you look at that second priority, and it's actually pretty exciting. So today is Thursday. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to hit, but
probably tomorrow.
Okay, so tomorrow. So 8:30 a.m. on Friday, the old structure that has been in place of where our building is going to be built is coming down. 8:30 a.m. tomorrow.
Shoot.
The wrecking ball comes out, and that thing is coming down.
And I don't know if you guys know, it's a Cherry Hill Lanes is what it used to be.
Yeah.
So I mean, growing up, I spent a couple days there.
Yeah, that building's gonna be dust.
Yeah,
I bet it's gonna come down fast too. Yeah. I mean, the way they do things these days. So 8:30 a.m. we're gonna have our camera crew out there, and it's gonna be exciting. So
that's
awesome. That's tomorrow morning, and then the foundation gets poured really not very long after that. We're aiming for April 11th, I think. April, I'm going to get out on the date on that. 11th as our groundbreaking ceremony. Sunday afternoon, April 11th. So don't quote me on that. That'll come out in the next week or two as we finalize stuff with the construction company. But it looks like that's where we'll be breaking ground. Man. They're going to pour the foundation, and I am believing God. We're in there by the end of the year. Christmas services, maybe even Thanksgiving services, maybe even earlier. So So that is like all systems go. Super exciting. Finalizing paint colors, finalizing floor tiles, all that stuff. And I really believe, I don't really get excited about buildings. It's not been my thing. Yep. We have 9 locations and we don't have a ton of permanent facilities. But I do think this is special in that this anchor location is going to allow us to be healthier as a church for every campus. So
for those of you guys who don't realize, and maybe don't go to New Haven, the teams in New Haven, they load in and load out all the equipment every week. So anything that you see on stage, any wires, all the signs, everything, because College Street Music Hall, that's a venue. That's a venue. Right. So Sunday morning in, Sunday night out.
Hundreds of volunteers pull this off.
This allows you guys to not only not have to worry about the load in and the load out process, but it also saves on the wear and tear. It also saves on your volunteers. It just creates so much opportunity for to grow. Someone needs to do a quick announcement before church. Boom, you can, it's not like you were testing cameras and testing audio and doing all these different things. Totally. I mean, everything is going to be there.
Even how many places have you and I recorded this podcast?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, like 15 places. Now we're going to have a room, like a room to record in that we can just stay in. I know, like all that stuff is just huge. And it's also, it's not that we can just be stable, which we can, but now we can actually really exponentially grow too. Because when you can set it up on Thursday and then run it on Sunday, what you can actually do multiplies, so now it's streaming from multiple locations and pinging back and forth. It's 7 camera angles rather than 3. It allows for the entire experience. And then it's a leveraging of our volunteers where instead of everyone having to be at the hub to pull it off, those top leaders can be at other campuses, improving their experience, building their teams. So it's going to multiply our efforts big time. Not to mention, I mean, we're already planning a men's conference, a women's conference, a parents conference, all in this new facility that is going to really help us develop and mature and disciple our church. Because we have a larger building that we now have complete control over. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it's going to be awesome.
I cannot wait.
I know. It's exciting.
So awesome.
Yeah. And then just the last thing is, we do have that site acquisition fund, and we are really we're in negotiations right now for a large permanent facility. It would be another significant build out, not as big as the anchor location, but another permanent facility for Hartford. It's actually the same square footage virtually as our anchor location. It's not quite as complicated because of all the production and everything else, but I'm really trusting God that by the fall we are in a permanent Hartford location and our permanent anchor location this fall. So the timing is just, it's the Lord. That's a big deal for our church, just really getting us stable so that as we continue in New Britain and in Worcester and then eyeing Waterbury and Providence for the future, we have the stability to really do this right.
That's
it's exciting.
So awesome. So I want to actually talk about a couple things today, and we ended up chatting a long time, but I want to talk a little bit about finances.
As
I have, a bunch of friends. I have a lot of people who ask questions.
You do have a bunch of friends, Kurt.
Yeah, I don't.
You do.
I just like
You're
to talk.
A friendly person.
I just like to talk. So I want to talk to you about what it says for finances in the Bible.
Yes.
There's, finances is brought up a lot in the Bible, and Jesus, he teaches us about investing. He teaches us, about where our heart is, and you have brought this up countless times in your sermons. So I wanted to ask you just a couple simple questions, and maybe you can explain them from there. So let's just talk about the 2 parables that I wrote down, Matthew 25:14 and also Matthew 6:12. So the Sermon on the Mount, let's just start right there.
Sure.
For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So Matthew 6:12.
How much time we got.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's so good.
So I actually want to contrast it with the parable of the bags of money. And that's Matthew 25:14, where the master gives his 3 servants
different amounts of money.
One he gave 5 bags, one he gave 2 bags, and one he gave 1 bag. I think I got that correct. And the first guy, he doubles it. He gets another additional 5 bags. The second guy, he doubles it as well. But the third guy, he buries it in the ground and gives it back, the original amount. So in looking at it, you're like, well, he didn't lose any money. He kept the money that his master gave him, but at the same time, he didn't gain anything.
And he's called wicked and lazy.
Yes.
And it's taken from him.
Wicked and lazy. And I also highlighted a point about that. According to his ability. was in the verse 14.
Yes.
So, and I know I don't want to go into a whole, sermon here, but those two things, they contrast each other on what it is to be a good steward of money.
Right.
So what does that mean in terms of Bible and what Jesus teaches us? How do we be a good steward of money?
Yeah. So let's start with Matthew 6:14, right? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So, I love what John Calvin said, the old theologian from another generation. He said that human beings are idol factories, right? So we have this propensity to take the temporary gifts of God and make them into ultimate things. So rather than worshiping, this is what Romans 1 describes, rather than worshiping our Creator, the human heart has this bent to end up worshiping things. And so by things, I don't just mean possessions. I mean status. I mean control. I mean other humans, right? You worship your spouse, worship a woman, worship sex, worship. And so our hearts are always, what I mean by worship is, I don't mean you're singing songs or lifting your hands, although you might be.
Yeah.
What I mean is you treat it as the most important thing in your life. That's what worship is. So worship is, if I lose this, I can't survive. That's what worship is. Yeah. And so you look at your life, what in your life you said, if I lost this, I literally could not live. So if I lost my spouse, my life is over. Well, you're supposed to love your spouse, but do you love them so much that your literal life is over? Well, that's actually a distortion, because your life is a gift from God. And so your life will go on for eternity, and you're not going to be married to your spouse, which is a super weird idea. I've already asked Jesus, me and Chrissy, maybe we could just stay married in heaven. But so in other words, there's something even more ultimate than love for your wife or love for your kids. And that ultimate thing is God. And so Augustine, the old theologian, he said that we have disordered loves naturally. All right. Human beings, because of sin, have disordered loves. In other words, if 10 is the most love and 1 is the least love, we give God a 3 and we give money an 8. Yeah. And so we say, oh, I want this more. And we actually live our lives, and the result is restlessness. When you disorder your loves, you're not at rest. So that's why Augustine said, our hearts were made for you, O God, and we are restless until we find rest in you. So in other words, the only way to really have peace, the only really be fulfilled, is to rightly order your loves. So what that means is, to rightly order your loves means God is my primary love. I love him the most. Now I can love my wife even deeper than if I didn't love God first. So with my wife being second, I can love her more than if I made her first, which is counterintuitive, but it's true. And my kids, and the call of my life, and gifts I have, and comfort, and all these things which are gifts from God, can be good if they're rightly ordered. Now, this is what Jesus is going after. He says, store up your treasure in heaven, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be. What he's teaching us is you can actually rightly order your love through choices. In other words, when you make certain choices or habits, it reorients your heart into God's way. And when it's God's way, you find peace and joy. So the first thing he tells you to do is, before you store up treasure on earth, store up treasure in heaven. Yeah. So it's not wrong to store up treasure on earth. It's only wrong if you do it before you store up treasure in heaven. It's all about the order. That's why we always say, I give first. Chrissy and I, we started tithing years ago. It's a biblical principle, Old Testament, New Testament, give 10% of our gross income away. And then we've increased our tithe year over year. So we went to 11%, 12%, 13%, 40%. And we've been increasing the amount that we give each year. And what we're doing in doing that is we give first. So that means before I pay my mortgage, which sounds crazy to people, right? Before I buy groceries, before I do anything else, I give to God. Now I'll talk about where that money goes in a second, but I give to God first. Why? Because I am ordering my loves. What I'm doing in that is I'm saying, God, you are more important to me than my physical life. Yeah. You're more important to me than my comfort. You're more important to me than my goals. And so when I do that, what ends up happening is all the order of my loves falls into line, and now I'm at rest. And what the Lord says is he promises us, he says, hey, if you'll do that, it comes with a blessing. So in doing that, now the other 90% is going to have the favor of heaven on it, because you've trusted me with the first 10. Yeah. And listen, like, people think this is like a manipulative strategy that pastors have to fund the church. And listen, if that's how you feel, what I would say is go to a different church that you trust.
Yeah.
Like you have to trust the leadership of the church. But the truth is, like, this is what I do. It's not I did it long before I was a pastor. I started doing this when I was 18 years old. And I've watched God favor my life because I've put him first. And so he has actually prospered and flourished and blessed me in a million ways, not just financially, but in a million ways, because I've kept him first in my resources.
Yeah.
And so anyways, the point is that this is something that it's not like a pastoral ploy to manipulate people. Although I be honest, I'm sure some leaders in the church have done that and God will judge them for that. This is a principle that aligns your heart. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Now you've got this other percentage of your income, right? What do you do with that? And this is where the parable of the bags of money comes in, because you have to be a steward, not just of your money, but of your talent and your resources too. And so every person, to be human means to be aimed at something. Yeah. Okay. You can't live without direction, without a drive. Ultimately, the human heart needs to be aimed at, I want to please God. This is what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5. He says, it is our aim, whether we're at home in the body or we're at home with the Lord, to be pleasing to God. Mm-hmm. And so I want to please God. Now, it pleases God when you use the resources and the talents that you've had to grow. He wants you to grow. He gave Kurt the talents that you have. He wants you to use them, and he wants you to prosper them. He just doesn't want you to idolize them. And so when you use them and prosper them, he'll multiply them, as long as, again, your loves are ordered and he's first. And so should you invest in, the stock market? Should you invest in real estate? Should you do all these things? I'm not going to answer all that today because I'm not a financial, guide here, but in terms of investments. But what I would say is you should wisely, morally, and ethically maximize the impact of your dollars and your skills so that they grow. But and I do believe God has called you to succeed. And so success is his call. It doesn't mean everybody's going to be a millionaire, but it means that whether you were given 1 bag or 5 bags or 2 bags, he wants to expand and grow you. But the big question is why? Is it to just line your life with golden comforts? No, I'm called to succeed, and I succeed to serve. And so every time God blesses me, it's so that I can be a blessing. Yeah, right?
My dad always said that. Why are we blessed to be a blessing?
We are, and it's true. But here's the secret: is when you follow that, you're happy.
Yeah.
When you don't follow that, it's never enough. Mm-hmm. And so that, again, where our hearts are restless until they find rest in God.
Yeah.
And so you could have $1 million in the bank, and we all know this. Just look at American society and be miserable, right? You got tons of millionaires who are depressed and anxious and miserable and empty. And then you got people who have no money at all, but they're full of joy, peace, and life. Money's not going to make you happy. But if you use your resources, whether they're great or small, to be a blessing, now you can actually find joy. Because Jesus wasn't kidding when he said it's better to give than receive.
Yeah.
It's better for you, not just for others. And so, that's a generous life. We didn't really get into where you give those dollars. That's another question we can get to, but I don't know if we have time now. But I do think that the spirit of generosity is the first element that mitigates that natural inclination to idolize comfort and the things of this world.
And I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said it's about happiness. It's about that fulfillment.
Yep.
Does money give you that happiness and that fulfillment? Well, if it did, we wouldn't be out there trying to make more money.
Sure.
And that is, it's a rat race in terms of, what we're doing. Yeah, we need to survive. We need to do this. But we're all constantly looking for more. Yeah. We're looking for this. We're looking for the next accomplishment. And we've had this conversation before on what those accomplishments do.
Yep.
They give you that joy for a split second.
Oh, yeah. And then get it.
Yeah. The next day, you're back at it trying to do something different. And I've been down that road plenty of times.
We all have.
Yeah. Whether it's sports, whether it's, whatever it is,
Yep.
but it's that fulfillment. What's going to give you that joy in life? And that only comes through the grace of God.
Yeah.
And I feel like the moment that you realize that gives you an inner peace. So now you can use your resources and use things and expand your joy to other people. Yeah. And we've had this conversation on what that looks like. Every time you see someone's hand raised when they're in the crowd, accepting the gift from Jesus of salvation. Yeah. I mean, like, what peace and what joy does that bring to your heart to see, that one lady or that one guy raise his hand, that one 8-year-old, like, what is that feeling? And I know that's not our conversation.
It's the greatest feeling in the world, because to me, I know that it has eternal ramifications. Like, just this last week, we had a 15-year-old kid at our North Campus open his heart to Christ. And then that was 2 weeks ago. And then last week, he brought his whole family, and the entire family, mom, dad, and I think he has a sister, all raised their hand to receive Jesus.
Come on.
And it's like now you're changing family trees. You're changing eternal lineage. And it's like, this is what matters, friends. Like, when you die, it doesn't matter if you have 4 houses in the Caymans. You're not taking them with you. Mm-hmm. And so if you can leverage your life for the purpose of God, it matters for eternity. And the fulfillment that you find is going to be 1,000 times more than just padding your life with every single comfort.
Yeah. And just to follow up on that, and I know we're running out of a little bit of time here, but I wanted to ask you this. We do live in Connecticut. We do live in New England. It's a pretty affluent area in terms of the rest of the world in comparison to the rest of the world.
Big time.
So as Christians, how do we enjoy the gifts of wealth while ensuring it doesn't become our identity?
Good.
And that's one of those questions where, it's hard to answer. Yeah. So from a pastoral standpoint, what does that mean?
Well, first of all, I think that a lot of Christians think that they'll just hear what we just talked about, and they'll think, God doesn't want me to enjoy his gifts. And that's not true. The scripture says God gave us everything to enjoy, right? And so he wants you to actually enjoy life, enjoy relationship, enjoy nice things, enjoy a delicious meal. He wants you to enjoy a sunrise. He wants you to enjoy a kayaking trip, whatever you like to do. He wants you... I don't kayak. He wants you to enjoy, right? And so it's not wrong to enjoy. These are gifts from God that should be enjoyed. Again, it goes back to this idea of rightly ordering my loves. How do I enjoy them? Well, I enjoy them by seeing the glory of God in them, seeing the glory of God in the smile from my wife, seeing the glory of God in a rightly ordered, clean room, seeing the glory of God in a trip on the beach where you walk by. So as I see God in these things, I can celebrate and enjoy, and they actually becomes worship, where I worship the Lord in his gifts. The problem is, you do have to, how do you do it? And there's not one small answer. Generosity is a piece of it. In other words, generosity does keep for me a border around my heart so that I don't make his good gifts into my ultimate idol, And because your heart, you got to be careful. Your heart will do that. Every one of us, success in the growth of our church can become an idol for a pastor in a heartbeat. That's why I thought Wake My Heart was so good, this last year of COVID was so good, because all the church growth stuff just went out the door. Yeah. And my first reaction was, perfect. Lord, crucify in me any idolatrous church growth thing that is more important than actually your glory in the world, and so we all have to check our hearts. And so I do think allowing yourself to enjoy the gifts of God is a part of it. John prays, I pray that you prosper and you're in good health, even as your soul prospers. Yeah. And so that's the prayer. So God wants you to prosper. He wants you to be in good health, and he wants your soul to prosper at the same time. It's not one or the other. It can be both, but we mitigate through generosity. We enter into enjoyment. I mean, there was a day in my life, I know this sounds crazy, but where I could not go to Starbucks to buy a coffee because I felt like it was dishonoring my resources before God, and I couldn't spend the $3.50 on a coffee. I'd be like, oh, I can't do it, Lord. And now I can, but I'm not going to go 3 times a day and waste thousands of dollars on coffee. I'm going to create a limit. And then I'm going to live within that limit. I'm going to enjoy the coffee, but it's not going to become the obsession of my life where I'm literally spending more on coffee than I am on advancing the kingdom. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that's how I always try to mitigate it, is how much is it dominating? Because anything can become dominating. where you're renovating your house, and now the perfect house is more important than advancing the gospel. Or you're, building your business, and now just more money in the business is more important than the glory of God. So this is a heart check for every individual. And there's no one way. You have to guard your own heart. But one of the ways is by consistently increasing your generosity as God blesses you.
That's powerful.
So, and that's what we've done. And God's continued to bless us. And candidly, it has guarded my heart. And you know me well. I don't thirst for money. Like I just don't. Thank you, Jesus. I always have to guard my heart, but that's not like a huge battle for me. If you gave me $1 million today, I'd be just figuring out ways to give it away because it's actually more fun. It's more fun to be generous than it is to hold on and try to hoard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's powerful. You're definitely preaching to someone out there. So real quick, Easter is coming up.
It is.
Anything exciting you want to talk about real quick before we sign off?
Yeah. I mean, I think the most exciting thing is that we don't have restrictions on our attendance. I mean, it really is because we didn't know how we were going to fit people for Easter with all these restrictions. Restrictions are lifted. We got 1 billion services going on. It's all posted online. Super excited. Got a lot of like little fun elements up our sleeve for Easter. But then the one thing I do want to emphasize is the week after Easter, we start an 8-week teaching series called Build This House. I am so excited for this. I think it's just time to build a strong foundation, a healthy foundation, starting in your own home. So we're going to talk about family, we're going to talk about kids, we're going to talk about marriage, but then from there, building the house of God in the sense of how do we really love one another well and build deep community. And I think it's time to really talk about those things. So I'm super excited about it.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first, guys. So again, any questions for our podcast, please email us at beyondsunday@voxchurch.org, and we will see you next week.